Hi everyone, my name is Tim McCutcheon. I'm the strategic advisor to Wealth Minerals, and I thought I'd take this opportunity to put together a little video about just the conversation of what's going on in the company and what we're doing to give our shareholders and stakeholders a better idea of what's actually going on. And this is the first of what will be a regular series of these types of videos. So let's get started. Got a lot of questions about the economic assessment scoping study that we're doing on Ollagüe. It is going forward. It's going forward with quite a bit of rigor. There's a lot of work that's being done in the background. I think we're all a little disappointed that we're already close to October and it's not quite done yet. But it is getting done. And I have to assure everyone that the team is working on it, and in particular, our folks in Europe who are coordinating everything are doing what they can to get this thing out and done as soon as possible. In fact, we actually had a private discussion with a major investment bank giving a presentation about what we're doing on Ollagüe. And I mention that because sometimes everything that we're doing is not necessarily in a press release, but I want to assure everyone that the PEA is coming out and that we've done a lot of time selecting which technology we're going to use, how we're going to pump out the brine to basically utilize this technology in sorption tanks. And all of that is requiring a fair bit of work to make sure that the result is robust, withstands any sort of scrutiny that there might be. And of course, sets the stage for the next step, which is going into a pre-feasibility and feasibility study. The other thing that's sort of interesting with all of that is that PEA will also set the stage for additional drilling to really expand out the resource around where we're going to be pumping and where we're going to be working. So the PEA is the first step in a continuing series of things that we're doing to advance Ollagüe through to development and production. And in Ollagüe, actually, I think a little earlier this year, we announced that we are working with the local indigenous people. We signed an additional agreement with them, and it's really an exercise of confidence building. I think one of the things that has changed in the mining industry over the past decade or so is a real effort to reach out to your various stakeholders, including local people, because at the end of the day, you're doing quite a bit of activity, frankly, in their backyard, and they deserve a bit of a say in an information transparency situation for them to feel comfortable. And the sooner you start that, the easier you sort of nip problems in the bud early on before they become something that could potentially be a problem that delays the project. So all of that work's going on. When we have a definitive sort of thing signed, we share it with our shareholders in the market, and that press release came out several months ago, but the relationship remains very strong, and I think that's something that we should all be aware of. On that note, there's been a lot of misunderstanding about the new lithium policy that was announced by President Boric back at the end of April of this year. In a nutshell, the president came out with a policy. Prior to that, there really was no policy. There is a legal framework in Chile which, ironically, in a way, sort of in an anomalous situation, because Chile is a very legalistic society. Chile is a very prescribed sort of jurisdiction, and in this one little area regarding lithium, it's one of the few places in natural resource work in Chile where things are actually quite vague. And so the president has used the office of the power of his office, essentially to put a policy together that clarifies and in a way kind of gets around a lot of the implied hurdles in the legislative framework in Chile. Lithium is a strategic material, and because of that, it must be under government control. But what that actually means is never really laid out in any sort of law other than control. Control can mean a lot of things. And then, how you go about getting the various regulatory permits to move it forward is also not quite clear. One of the very strange things about Chile is, even though it's a huge player in the lithium market, the arrangement under which lithium is produced in Chile right now is a really strange, anomalous situation. To reiterate, and I've said this before, but again, I think a lot of people haven't quite done their due diligence to the extent they should have. SQM and Albemarle, which are major producers of lithium in Chile in the Atacama Salar, They do not own the license upon which they extract lithium. They are contractors to a company called Corfo, which is a state regional development company. So when President Boric came out with this new policy, the word that was bandied about through Reuters and Bloomberg was nationalization. It is not nationalization because they don't own it in the first place to have it taken away. There are production contracts that Corfo says, dear SQM, you have expertise in doing this. We're going to hire you to take lithium out of our license, and you're going to get a cut of the proceeds of it. It's exactly what it is. Clearly, it's a lot of money. It's a big contract. It's a little strange, but it in no way means that SQM has title or Albemarle has actual title to the lithium in the ground. They don't. And so I want to make that very clear because it certainly caused a lot of confusion regarding what we're doing. We actually own the licenses, whereas SQM and Albemarle do not. And that's a big advantage for us in terms of moving these things forward. In particular, taking into account President Boric's policy announcement, which specifically says lithium production in the future will be a public-private partnership where, you think about a joint venture. Whenever you have a joint venture, the two sides or three sides or whatever it is have to contribute something to the pot, so to speak. Well, we have the most valuable thing to contribute to the pot, which is the actual license. And so that certainly gives us a lot of negotiating power and leverage when we go into the process of actually putting together the legal framework to go into production. So anyway, a little bit long-winded, but I think that the topic deserved a little bit of that kind of discussion to make sure that everyone watching this understands. So we're there. We talked about the engineering work that's ongoing. We talked about Ollagüe, community efforts there. We talked about the Boric administration's sort of new policy push. And the last note on that, like any government in the world, you have a lot of bureaucrats who are tasked with making things happen, and oftentimes they don't really know how to do it. I mean, there's no playbook on how you sort of do these things. So Boric came out with the policy, which essentially is, at the end of all of this, whatever it is, I want the industry and our, the Chilean government's involvement to look like this. Let's call that point Z. We're now at point A, and it's up to basically the legislators, the bureaucrats, and the regulators to fill in the blanks of B to Y, essentially. And that's where, we are right now. We have hired a fellow named Francisco Lepele, who is a very experienced executive in Chile. The place he worked earlier before he joined us was Chile's largest iron ore and steel producer. So he knows what he's doing. He knows how to, the really granular detail of how to get something done, because that's sort of what he was involved with. And he is meeting with various ministers, bureaucrats, regulators on practically a daily basis, working with them and consulting with them to say, okay, fine, this is the policy. Well, what piece of paper do I fill out? What form do I file with whom? How does this actually, how do we implement the policy so that we get to point Z? And so, that's all happening right now. And so again, I just want to assure everyone looking at this that just because we don't have a press release out every single day doesn't mean nothing's happening. There's actually quite a bit doing, and frankly, it's very boring, tedious work, but it's absolutely necessary. People talk about Argentina, talk about Chile. Argentina power is much more diffuse. The regional governors have much more leeway in terms of what they want to do. And so it's actually, on a short-term basis, an easier place to work. On a long-term basis, Argentina as a jurisdiction on a macro level, it's got a lot of issues. I think we can all appreciate that. So, the wealth management's bet, if you will, is at the end of the day, when all is said and done, you'll be better off in a jurisdiction like Chile than you will be in Argentina. Even though in the short term, of course, it's incredibly frustrating because we see all of our peer group companies doing things much faster than we're doing in Chile. But I think it'll pay off in the end and pay off big. And on the Atacama, there's been a lot of sort of talk and rumor about what's going on there. And we are doing everything we can in terms of several fronts. One, the ESG front, outreach to the local indigenous people. For really the first time in many, many years, we are in a very good place. And I would expect to see news very soon on that. But at the end of the day, what it all boils down to is having that buy-in in terms of being a good corporate citizen and having that trust built, so that when you do go to drill and work and frankly dig a hole in the ground next to someone's backyard, that they understand why you're doing it, they understand how it benefits them, and they understand the consequences of everyone being a part of the project. And so that's actually going quite well. In terms of the Boric administration and how that new policy applies to Atacama. Again, a lot of work is being done. Atacama, as we all know, is the reason it's political is because it's so big and so valuable. Those conversations are ongoing. There's quite a bit of talk about Codelco, which has sort of been the nominated state company to sort of drive forward lithium for now. Codelco is in a lot of talk with the other players in the Atacama Salar. And to a certain extent, we're trying to see where that goes first before we're next on the list in terms of having our chance to sit down at a table with Codelco or Inami or whatever it is the new entity comes out, to have our conversation regarding, okay, how do we put together a joint venture? How do we put together some sort of structure that complies with Boric's policy announcement and at the same time actually makes economic sense? So stay tuned. And in the meantime, it's the market in general is soft. Rising interest rates make money more expensive. More expensive money means there's less money available for speculation, and that basically drives down the whole market. I think most capital market participants know that an enormous amount of the money in the stock market is borrowed money. And the more expensive it is to borrow, the less money there's available. And that applies to sort of across the board, whether you're Microsoft or you're Wealth Minerals or someone else. And so clearly, the market volatility is has everyone worried. But in terms of what we do as management, we just plug away day to day, and the volatility in the share price is something we obviously look at and we're sensitive to, but there's not that much we can do about it, to be perfectly honest, other than plug away and come out with news flow that is substantial and that changes the trajectory of the company towards development and production. So thank you for your time. As always, we're always available here to answer questions, to field inquiries. So info@wealthminerals.com is one place to go. Or on our website, you'll see our various PR people that are available to answer questions or to forward questions on to others. And I just want to say thank you for your attention and have a good day.